Well, Sean Dyche has another tough job on his hands. He spent almost a decade at Burnley, leading them to multiple Premier League promotions and notably qualifying for the Europa League in 2018, but didn't get to manage the relegation fight until the very end last season. He was fired with 8 games left. This is his first job since, and he's right back in a relegation scrap now with Everton. Hi, everybody. I'm Cara Banks as we welcome in our Premier League insider, David Ornstein. David, let's continue the conversation on this managerial change at Everton. Just 2 points from safety. Can you tell us what went into the decision to bring in Sean Dyche at this point of the season?
Well, Cara, the first thing to say is that Everton really wanted to give Frank Lampard as long as possible for some continuity at long last, but it just was not going well. Something had to give, and as is often the case, that proved to be the manager in Lampard. Farhad Moshiri, the Everton owner, immediately set about the process to replace him, and his favoured candidate was Marcelo Bielsa. Talks did take place. There were a number of Zoom calls. He then flew into the UK and they met in person. But his demands, as I understand it, were deemed unrealistic. There was a chance that he might manage the under-21 team before taking control of the first team in the summer. That wasn't possible. As soon as Moshiri and the hierarchy met Dyche, they were really impressed. And there was no way back from there. 3.5-year contract. There is no break clause in that if they are relegated. There is a bonus, I'm sure, a massive one, no doubt, if they are to stay in the Premier League. And the feeling he's given around the club has been really good so far. He's impressed people, the discipline, the clarity, the communication, and he's a very amenable character. Now, the problem is Everton got no recruits in during the January transfer window. They didn't reinvest any of the money that they received for Anthony Gordon. That's partly because of their financial fair play position, partly because they've got a new stadium on the way. They did try to do it. They were knocked back by a number of players. Sulemana from Rennes, Batshuayi at Besiktas. They came close to getting a loan deal for Anthony Elanga, but it wasn't possible. What needs to happen now is that Everton need to unite at board level. Bill Kenwright, the chairman, Farhad Moshiri, the owner, and they need to reconnect with the fan base. That may be the most crucial thing if they're going to help propel the team forward.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to watch and see how that develops under Dyche. You mentioned no new recruits, David. The same can't be said for Chelsea Football Club. I wonder what the impression is in England about this unprecedented transfer strategy. Can you share some insight?
Chelsea, Cara, are the talk of the town. I think everybody has them on their lips throughout the Premier League and Europe. People are confused, they're jealous, they're bitter, they're bemused, they want to know more. Some of them are cynical about how they're doing this and want them to be punished. It's a huge outlay, but it does make sense when you look into it because, yes, they are committing high transfer fees, but they're doing it over huge, long contracts. And therefore, there's a process in football called amortization, which means you can spread the cost of the transfer fee over the length of the contract. And Chelsea are doing that by paying relatively low salaries in line with the market rate, which is lower than they were doing under the previous regime. They also have clauses in the contracts, all of the new ones, that if they don't get into the Champions League, then the contracts will reduce in size. So they do think it is actually manageable. And if the signings don't work out over those long periods with the lower salary, they may be able to move the players on elsewhere. They're also going for a lot of young players. There's a youth movement going on at Stamford Bridge, and paying the price for that are going to be the likes of Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, who's been left out of their Champions League squad for the second half of the season. I'm told he is trained impeccably. He is a top pro. He's done nothing wrong, but clearly Chelsea have decided they want to move him on. Going forward, I think the spending is actually going to come down and be more measured. They think that this part of the process is almost complete. They've got people in place off the pitch, and now they've got the recruits on the pitch as well. So it is a fascinating situation, but they do feel that there is some method in this perceived madness.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. For even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock and be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend on USA Network and on Peacock. We will see you over there.